3, 2, 1, smile. Hi, Mr. Sharp. How are you doing in Como?
Oh, I'm having an amazing time. This show's incredible. It's run by my friend Steve Morga, who's like a legend. And I was here for the first one, and it's just amazing to be back. But I've seen we just had the best day and the best couple of days because so many of us haven't seen each other for years, you know? So we're all smiling and having a good time.
It's really good to hear that from you.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, since Starhenge is going to come out in July,
yes.
You said, okay? What can you tell about it too? Let's give a hint about it.
It's a long-term project. It's a big dream of mine to do this book. It's all the kind of stuff that I love, which is Arthurian and Merlin kind of things that I got really interested in when I was a kid. And I always wondered, you know, because I loved like Greek mythology and I loved the Roman mythology. I always thought, I don't know anything about like Celtic mythology and King Arthur and all of that. So I got really obsessed with that when I was maybe 14 years old and started reading like where are the origins of where does it all come from, and that sort of led me down this kind of crazy rabbit hole, and I got into like the Mabinogion, which is like the Welsh mythology, and then we got into Irish mythology. And initially I was going to do it, Geoffrey of Monmouth was like the first guy to write about Merlin, and originally I was going to do it as a really kind of highbrow, you know, like a totally like true to Geoffrey of Monmouth version of it in a kind of wild fantasy illustrated style. But actually, it's very convoluted, and it's quite hard to read. It's a little bit dense. It's a little bit for real nerds of that kind of stuff. I kind of love it, but most people would find it a little bit hard going. So then it was like, well, what do I love? And the things that I love are science fiction and fantasy. And I thought, is there any way I can sort of bring the two things that I love most in comics and stories together? And I thought of T.H. White. So T.H. White was like one of the early 20th century writers of Arthurian mythology. He was the one who sort of popularized the idea that Merlin was born in the future, died in the past. And as soon as you sort of think of that idea, it's like, well, how far in the future? So I really took that idea to the extremes and then thought, okay, let's put him in the deep future and put him against AI, which is a huge war going on in the future with artificial intelligence from an alien planet.
So it's like Merlin against Terminator.
Yes, exactly right? It's Excalibur meets Terminator. So it's like it was just so much fun once I sort of came up with that concept, and then the idea was then that like what are the Terminator type characters, the AI characters are trying to stop? And the thing they can't fight against is magic. Magic doesn't make any sense. So they start time traveling back to end any magic from the 5th century, and then when you started thinking about that, it's like, okay, so let's establish that in the 5th century magic was genuinely a real thing. So then you've got the DNA that's passed across the centuries. And then the other thing was like initially it was going to be narrated by future Merlin, but that got a little bit too kind of psychobabble sci-fi. It was a little bit too like nerdy again. And then I thought, okay, let's have Taliesin from the sort of Merlin stories tell the story, and that was a little bit too big and ponderous and fantasy, and also kind of hard to explain. If he's from the 5th century, you wouldn't understand the kind of future sci-fi stuff, which led to the sort of present day thread. Amber Weaver, who's our narrator. And she's like a young woman from our century, and she's sort of very on it with references. So it's full of kind of contemporary references and references of films and references of comics and references of books and music and all sorts, you know. And sometimes nerdy references and sometimes cool references. And she's a bit of a goth kind of witchy, arty. She's an artist. She sees everything through drawings. Which is fun because that means I can sort of shift the styles based on her perspective. and she's had a big tragedy, which we find out as the book unfolds. But what she brings is sort of some fun. So I've got 3 kids that they're all growing up now. I've got one left just at high school, but they've all sort of informed Amber's language and how she talks and what that generation talks about. So I know I've got it pretty right. And not too much of an old man kind of book. But that I think is fun because it makes I think it makes it more accessible for a young audience as well as an older audience. That's the hope, anyway. So yeah, it's been great.
I can't really I can't really wait to read it.
Thank you.
It's been something really mad. Thank you.
I appreciate it.